My name is Ayça and I'm a second year master's student here in Stony Brook. Today I'll be interviewing one of our wonderful violin faculty, Phil Setzer of the Emerson Quartet. Hi Phil, and thank you for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Hi, Cha.
So here's my first question. I know that in normal times you have such a busy concert schedule, but now that concerts and tours are canceled, how do you keep yourself motivated?
We're trying to, take whatever good things we can from this time, and we're doing some recording, some video recording, the quartet, and also I think we're all doing a lot of teaching, as you know, because you're the violin TAs. Also, it's been interesting just to be able to get people together, even just in terms of family, even though we're not together with a lot of our family, we're actually in some ways more in touch with them. I had a Zoom session a couple of weeks ago with my cousins, one of whom was in Israel and one is in Florida and one is in Boston. And so, it was nice. I don't think we would have all gotten together that way normally under normal conditions.
Are you currently rehearsing with the Emerson Quartet, and which pieces are you working on?
Well, we started last week. We all had COVID tests in the beginning of the week. We all were negative, obviously. We wouldn't have rehearsed. He had measured everything. We were we were far enough apart. We all, we wore masks all day, 6 hours or so, which is not easy to do, but you get used to it, and it's a lot better than getting sick with COVID. Beginning of November, we're going to film Opus 130 Beethoven with the Grosse Fuga as the finale, and that's for 92nd Street Y. And then we're also doing two movements of Schumann Quartet in A major and the Brahms Piano Quintet with Yefim Bronfman. So that'll be nice to do. And we also have a recording coming out of the Schumann quartets.
Was there any time in your life when you thought of doing something else other than being a violinist? And what would you want to do if you weren't playing the violin? Have you ever thought of that?
Oh, yes, I did. Well, when I was a kid, what I really wanted to do was play baseball. That was the thing that I enjoyed the most. And I played in the Little League, and I loved it. I wasn't very good, but I really loved doing it. But I was very interested in medicine. I've always been interested in medicine. I think I hopefully would have been a good doctor in terms of my relationship with the patients, and maybe, my small muscle control from playing the violin.
I never thought of you being a doctor.
Well, yeah, but that's what teaching's like, right? You come in and there's something wrong, and I ask you a bunch of questions. I hear you play, and then I try to fix it. So it's the same thing, right?
So speaking of teaching, what are the differences you see in teaching today versus the teaching from when you were a student?
First of all, I have to say I was extremely lucky. I grew up in Cleveland, as you know, and my parents both played violin, played very well, played in the Cleveland Orchestra. My dad was assistant principal second violin. My mom was sort of in the middle of the first violin section. I started studying with my dad, who was a very good teacher of young students, beginners. Whenever anybody wanted to start violin, they always went to my father, and so that was great for a couple of years. And then he could see that I was talented, and he wanted to get an opinion from one of his colleagues. So he asked the concertmaster, who at that time was Joseph Gingold, if he would listen to me and just to get advice. So he wasn't really thinking of that Gingold would take me as a student, but Gingold heard me, and he thought there was potential, and he offered to teach me. Of course, I also after that I studied for 11 years with Raphael Druyan, who was the new concertmaster, who was a great teacher, great musician. I learned so much from him. And then I went to Juilliard and studied with the great Oskar Shumsky. I also had great teachers for chamber music, Robert Mann from the Juilliard Quartet and Felix Galimir for piano trio. So I couldn't have had better teaching. The people that I studied with, Gingold and Druyan and Shumsky, and my father, they were very good teachers, but no one was no one was ever mean to me or ever said anything that made me feel, um, I don't know, kind of reduced, or just depressed about the fact that maybe I should do something else. The only person that made me feel that way ever was Oscar Shumsky, and only because of his playing, not because of his personality. But um, sometimes he would just pick up the violin and demonstrate something, and I would think, maybe I should go into medicine because I'll never be able to play like that.
When did you start teaching in Stony Brook, and what changes have you seen within the Stony Brook music department since then?
Well, I taught the first we teaching position that the quartet had was at the Hart School of Music and University of Hartford, and we were there for 21 years. And then I came to Stony Brook around 2000 to help my friend Mitchell Stern, who was the violin teacher and also taught viola at Stony Brook. And Mitchell was going through some health issues and had just been diagnosed with Parkinson's. The night before he went into surgery, I spoke on the phone with him for about 2 hours, and he was talking about every student, telling me all these things about each student. He was so dedicated, such a wonderful person. I had taught with him at Hart also, and but he was teaching at Stony Brook at that time, and he needed help. And I kept saying to him, Mitch, you don't need to tell me all this. He said, well, I'll be more relaxed if I tell you all these things, just in case. And I was like, you're going to be fine, Mitch. You're going to be fine. Anyway, he had the surgery, which went successfully, but he never woke up. He never woke up from it. And he died. He died a few days later.
I'm sorry.
I think he was something like 47 years old. I mean, it was just horrible. And so I ended up staying at Stony Brook and Hart. I was teaching at both places to help the school, and also, in memory of Mitch, I wanted to help him and help his students. And I just ended up staying, and then, I got to know some of the other faculty. It's really interesting. Your question about how much it's changed since then. In some ways it's changed. Of course it's changed. I mean, there are different people. There are a number of people that were on the faculty then who have retired. But in many ways it's still the same. It's a very small faculty. It's a very small community. It's extremely nurturing. The academic faculty is excellent. It's also it's still one of the most performance-oriented DMA programs, which I think has made it popular and successful. But at the same time, the academics are very strong, and we now have a lot of young academic teachers there. That's one of the big changes.
What advice would you give to young musicians who want to pursue a career in string quartet or other chamber ensembles?
Well, I think that it's difficult right now because of the pandemic for chamber music. For string quartet, I mean, we can be thankful that it's probably the least dangerous, if as long as we wear a mask. But I think the testing is going to be really, really crucial. I think obviously we can't become a string quartet or be a string quartet if we can't play together. So there has to be a way to make it safe for us to be together, to rehearse together, to travel together. Classical music is not going to die, and the string quartet will come back. And people, I can tell you from being in Taiwan and playing those concerts, that the audience was so appreciative and just so warm and so hungry to hear live music like that there's no way that when it becomes safe again that people aren't going to run out and they're going to want to hear live music again, because just hearing it through headphones on a computer or even through the race, it's just not the same. Even if you're looking at it on a big screen, it's just not the same.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
And thank you, Ayça, for having me.
Of course.